The time has finally come. Whenever we get a brand new Pokemon game or generation that gives us a bunch of brand new Pokemon, I always like to make a video where I give my opinions on every new Pokemon that game or generation introduced. And today is no exception because I am here to give you guys my opinion on every single new Pokemon and Paldean Form that we got in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. This is going to be a lot of fun. I've been anxiously awaiting getting enough time with the launch of the games to be able to do this video, and it's finally time to do it. So without further ado, let's just jump in. So, I am excited to announce that this video has been made possible in part by today's sponsor, who's one of my favorites, Ridge Wallet. You may remember some of my previous Ridge sponsorships because they have been a big supporter of the channel, and the Ridge Wallet is something that I personally use every day and have for years now, and it's without a doubt the best wallet that I have ever owned, and it's not even close. I personally love how low profile it is and how it streamlines everything that a wallet should be to perfection, to the point that you are never going to have to worry about carrying around your wallet again. In addition to their wallets though, Ridge have also introduced the key case, which does exactly what their wallets do, but for the jangly mess of keys that literally everybody has, making it a great gift for anyone on your list this holiday season. I honestly cannot recommend Ridge enough, so if you would like to hop on either of these yourself, you can go to ridge.com/hoops to get the best offer on these products. You can save up to 40% through December 22nd. You can even test drive a wallet for up to 99 days, and if you don't like it, you can send it back for a full refund, and they even come with a lifetime warranty as well. So be sure to check all of that out with the link below, and a big thank you to Ridge for supporting the channel. Okay, so there are actually over 100 new Pokemon that were introduced in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, so we're gonna have to go through this fairly quickly, but with that said, we are of course going to go in Pokedex order and start first with the grass starter of the Paldea region, Sprigatito. Now, Sprigatito isn't really my favorite starter ever. It's definitely my least favorite of the Paldea starters, but with that said, I don't think it's terrible either. It's just not really my favorite, doesn't stand out to me, so I'm gonna give it a B rank. However, when it comes to its evolution Florigato, even though it is standing up and we all wanted Sprigatito to stay on all fours, I actually think the design is really good, and that's really all you want out of any Pokemon design. I also think the name is awesome too, so I'm gonna give Florigato an A rank. When it comes to its final evolution though, Meowscarada, it unfortunately takes a step back. I was interested to see the final evolutions of the starters compared to the ones in Gen 8, because I did not like the ones in Gen 8, and I do feel like this is a step up from those, but still not great overall, and so I'm gonna give it a B-. Next up, we're gonna get into Fuecoco though, and Fuecoco's easy, because Fuecoco is an S tier. In fact, I'm gonna give Fuecoco an S+ tier because I love it that much. It's already one of my favorite starters of all time. Crocalor, at first glance, I definitely wasn't a fan of, and it is definitely a downgrade compared to Fuecoco, but I can kind of feel myself warming up to it, and I don't think it's terrible either, so I'm gonna go ahead and give it a B rank. Skeledirge though, Skeledirge is awesome. First off, the name is phenomenal, the typing is great, and the design is pretty cool too, so I'm gonna go ahead and give Skeledirge an A ranking. Not quite as good as Fuecoco, but still pretty good and still pretty awesome for a final starter evolution. When it comes to Quaxly, it's sort of in the middle of Sprigatito and Fuecoco for me. I like it better than Sprigatito, but not nearly as much as Fuecoco, and so for that reason, it gets a B+. With its evolution Quaxwell, it's kind of the quintessential middle starter evolution because it does have that weird, awkward, teenage puberty type of look to it, and so for that reason it is a step back from Quaxly. However, I don't think it's terrible, so I'm gonna go ahead and give it a B-. And now, when it comes to Quaxly's final evolution, Quaquaval, I'm kinda split on this Pokemon because there are some things I like, some things I dislike, and so for that reason I feel like I just have to come in the middle of those two opinions and give Quaquaval an average ranking, which for me is a B. And now we're going to start getting into the regular Pokemon of the Paldea region, starting first with Lechonk. And I mean, what is there not to love about Lechonk? It has got to be one of the best early route Pokemon of all time, and so for that reason, Lechonk gets an A from me. Its evolution Oinkologne is pretty interesting though. I personally saw the female version first and thought that came completely out of left field, but the fact that it has both a female and a male variant is pretty cool, and I think the design is solid enough as well, so I'm gonna give it a B rank. Speaking of early route Pokemon, Tarantula is next, and Tarantula gets an S rank. I love this design so much. In fact, I had it on my team in the early game before, unfortunately, it evolved into Spidops and ruined everything. I get this Pokemon is going for the spider pun, or at least I'm assuming that's where it's going, which is clever, but I think the design is kinda garbage, and it was disappointing as an evolution of Tarantula, and so I am going to give it, you know what, I'm going to give it a D rank. I really don't like this Pokemon. Nimble is up next, and I can't believe it actually took us this long to get a Grasshopper Pokemon, but Nimble is pretty cool. It's got a unique look to it, it's pretty interesting, and so I'm going to go ahead and give it a B rank. Its evolution Lokix, though, is terrifying. This thing would attack me every single time I came across one, and as far as its design, I think its design is alright, but it's nothing that I'm like super crazy about either, and so I think I'm gonna give it a B-. Now we're taking a look at Pawmi, and I think Pawmi is great, not only as a Pikachu clone, but also just as its own individual Pokemon design, and so for that reason, I am going to give Pawmi an A+. Its evolution Pawmo is basically just a bigger Pawmi though. It does add the fighting type, which is really cool, especially because that's the first electric fighting type Pokemon we have ever got, but it's still just a bigger Pawmi. And so I think I gotta downgrade it at least a little bit to a B+. I still like the design, like the typing and everything, but it's kinda just the same thing. And its final evolution Pawmit is once again just another bigger Pawmi, which is once again really sad. I really like the designs themselves, it's just not really offering anything new. So I think I'm still gonna give it a B+ just because I do like the design, but in terms of the evolution ranking has gotta be like a C or a C- because it definitely was a little underwhelming to just get a bigger version of Pawmi each time. Moving along, we are now going to take a look at Paldean Wooper, and what is there not to love about Paldean Wooper? It's great, it's awesome, it's a regional variant of Wooper for crying out loud, and therefore it gets an A rank. The really cool thing about Paldean Wooper is that it got its own unique evolution into the new Pokemon known as Clodsire. And I actually like Clodsire more than I like Quagsire. I think this is an awesome Pokemon, a great evolution, it definitely lives up to the Wooper hype, and so I think I'm actually gonna give it an A+. I really like it a lot. Tandemaus is up next, and this honestly is a really unique and also cute Pokemon. It's not the first Pokemon that is just multiples of each other, so it's definitely not anything that's unheard of, and in that category, I think it's actually pretty cute. It's kind of got an endearing sort of quality to it, and so therefore I'm gonna give it a B rank. Its evolution Mousehold, however, just takes that charm and adds even more to it. I really love its name, it's pretty ingenious, and then it's also got two forms, a family of 3 form where they have 1 baby, and I believe a family of 4 form where they have 2 babies, which is just, once again, it adds to the charm of this Pokemon, just makes what it is even better, and so that gets it a B+ from me. Fido is awesome. It's great, it's cute, it's got an awesome design, an awesome name. There's just nothing bad about this Pokemon in my opinion, and so therefore I'm gonna give it an A+. Its evolution Darkspun is basically just more of the same. It's adorable, it's cute, I love how its reddish coloration not only resembles the Dachshund dog breed that it is named after, but also gives it that cooked look to it compared to Fido, which is a lot more doughy and uncooked because it's the pre-evolution and Darkspun is the evolution. There's just, once again, nothing not to love about this Pokemon, and so therefore it also gets an A+. Smoliv is up next, and how do you not love a Pokemon that is named Smoliv? It's just adorable. I love it. It gets an A+ as well. With its evolution Dolliv, I honestly wasn't sure what to expect with a Smoliv evolution, but I really like this a lot. It just does a great job of not only being a Smoliv evolution, but also filling that feminine grass-type Pokemon role that we seem to get every generation, and so I am going to give this one an A rank. The same pretty much goes for its final evolution as well, our Boliva. It's just a really solid evolution and a continuation of the theme and the concepts that are in this family of Pokemon, and so I think I'm also going to give this one an A rank too. Squawkabilly is basically a perfectly average Pokemon. I think that kind of fits the definition of what this Pokemon is. It's got a few different forms which are really cool, and the design is perfectly solid, but there's really nothing more to it other than that. It doesn't evolve, and it doesn't really have anything particularly striking to it, so for that reason, I gotta give it a B. Knackley is up next, and this salt-based Pokemon is pretty interesting. It's got a unique look to it, and it's just, I think uniquely interesting is the way I would describe it, and so I think I'm going to give it a B rank as well. Its evolution Knacklestack, though, is honestly kind of terrible. It's like the biggest Minecraft type of ripoff that you could ever expect. It's like Pokemon were scared that Minecraft was taking away their kid audience, and so they made a Minecraft Pokemon to try and draw those kids back, but that doesn't work in Pokemon in my opinion. I don't really like the look of this at all, and so I think I'm gonna give it a D-. Its final evolution, Garganacl, though, actually redeems its pre-evolution quite a bit. Not to the point where I suddenly like this Pokemon, but it definitely makes it look a lot better in my opinion, for whatever reason, don't ask me why, and so I think I'm gonna give this Pokemon a B-. Annihilape is up next, and boy oh boy is this Pokemon awesome. It's got an incredible design, it's got a really cool and pretty rare type combination, and it's also a Primeape evolution, which just adds to the cool factor even more. This is an easy S tier for me. Charcadet is a pretty interesting Pokemon. It's obviously the pre-evolution to Armarouge and Ceruledge, and overall, like, it's not my favorite, but I definitely think it's a pretty good design, and I don't have anything bad to say about it, so I think I'm gonna give it a B+. Speaking of Armarouge, though, it basically does a lot of what Charcadet does for me just as an evolution, thanks to all their similarities. And so for that reason, they're basically the same in terms of rank, but I do think I'm going to rank it slightly lower and give it a B ranking. It's a very high B, but yeah, for whatever reason, I just feel like this is a B more than a B+. Don't ask me why. Ceruledge, though, Ceruledge definitely got the benefit of the doubt between these two evolutions. This Pokemon is phenomenally cool looking, probably one of the most cool looking Pokemon of all time in terms of that cool factor, and so for that reason, I think it's another S tier. Tadbulb is up next, guys, and I absolutely love this adorable little fella. He's got the cuteness going for him, he's got the really just interesting design factor going for him, he's got the ingenious design factor going for him, because he's in the shape of a light bulb, hence his name, which I just think is amazing, and then he's also a tadpole too, which is not only a unique look for a tadpole, but also just uses what he is in an ingenious way to communicate the electric type, so this is another S tier for me. I only wish that Bellabolt was as good as Tadbulb, though, because if it was, this definitely would have been on my team, and while I don't dislike Bellabolt, I just think it's a huge drop off from Tadbulb, which is why Bellabolt gets that average B ranking instead of anywhere near close to S, where its pre-evolution was. Another electric type, Wattrel, is up next, and I think Wattrel is pretty dang cool. Not only is it a bird Pokemon, like an actual bird, who's got that electric flying type, which is really cool, and you don't really get to see that sort of thing every day, but the design is really cool too, and so I am gonna give it an A+. And Kilowattrel basically just takes that and extends it and fleshes it out, and once again just is all of the things I said about Wattrel just put into an evolution that pulls off that evolution well. So once again, another A+. The Dunsparce. Oh gosh. We waited so long for a Dunsparce evolution, and they just gave us a bigger Dunsparce as the evolution, and that was it. Sure, it has 2 forms, but it literally is just a longer, bigger Dunsparce. There's so much potential there, and they just gave us a bigger Dunsparce. I don't know, guys. I think this one might have to be the first F tier of the video. I hate to do it because, like, I love the fact that they gave us a Dunsparce evolution, but this was just such a disappointment. Like, they could have done so much better. They could have done anything and it could have been better. So yeah, I think I gotta give it an F tier. Farigiraf though, Farigiraf is how you do an evolution to a Johto Pokemon that needed it, because Farigiraf is awesome. I've talked about in other videos how it seems like this Pokemon is based on the guy who invented the spacesuit, and so it's got those astronaut vibes where its tail head comes over and covers its main head like an astronaut helmet, and it's a psychic type which goes with space, and it's a giraffe, so its long neck is up in the clouds or up in the stars in this case. I don't know if any of that is actually true or intentional, but that's what I'm seeing, and I absolutely love that. So until I am shown otherwise, I'm going to give this Pokemon an S rank. Maschiff. Maschiff is like another one of those solid designs. It's not anything amazing, but it isn't anything offensive either, and so for that reason, it gets the average B tier. Mastiff is also basically the same, however, it got the honor of being featured in the Path of Legends storyline, which gave it a backstory and made it way more endearing and charming, so I'm always going to have a soft spot for Mastiff now, and so that gets it a tier up from its pre-evolution and gets it a B+. Shroodle is kind of a goofy, interesting, unique, derpy looking Pokemon all in one. But I do actually like it because I like the uniqueness to it. It's not too off the wall, but is just unique enough to really catch your eye and make you interested in it. And so for that reason, I think I'm gonna go with a B+ ranking as well. I also really like Grafaiai too. The one thing that throws me off with this Pokemon, however, are its eyes. The eyes are obviously very unique and strange, and I know that's all a part of the design, and it's all got a purpose and everything, but that is one part about this Pokemon that does throw me off. So I'm still going to give it a B+, because there are a lot of other things that I do enjoy about it, but it's a B+ that I also think looks kinda weird, if that makes sense. And now we come to our second and only other Paldean form, and that would be Paldean Tauros. Now, I gotta tell you, at first I just saw the base fighting type form of this Pokemon and thought that was it, because, I mean, why else would I think anything different? And I thought this Pokemon had a solid design, but it wasn't anything crazy. It was basically just a recolor, which left me excited that it got a regional variant, but also kind of disappointed. And so I give that particular form a B tier, but then I realized it's got 2 other forms to it. It's got its fire fighting type form and its water fighting type form. So not only did Tauros get a regional variant, it basically got 3, and these other 2 are incredible. The fire fighting type form gets an S rank for me for sure, and the water type either gets an A+ or an S, but I think I'm just going to give it an S because I love the concept. I love how there's 3 different variations. I love the look of it as well. I just think it's awesome. So this one definitely was interesting for me because I didn't know about the fire and water versions until later, which definitely saved this form in my eyes. Bramblin is up next, and Bramblin is fantastic. I love this little tumbleweed ghost. It's got such a simple yet effective design, and its cry is just adorable. It's amazing, and so I'm gonna give it an S rank. I really like this Pokemon. Its evolution Brambleghast is interesting because it, to me, does a good job of being an evolution of Bramblin, and its design individually is also really good, but at the same time, I think I don't know, it just isn't quite as good as Bramblin is for whatever reason. It's the charm, the cuteness, whatever, and so it's still really good. I'm gonna give it an A rank, but it's not quite that S tier. Next up is the first of what I'm going to be referring to as convergent Pokemon, aka the lookalike Pokemon that look like regional variants but are actually their own individual species, and the one we're looking at right now is Toadschool. And you know, I was kinda wary of this Pokemon at first, but due to the sheer goof factor that it has in all of its mannerisms and the way it walks and talks and just moves around, I think I gotta give it like a B+, because it's ridiculous, but in a very positive way. So B+, that's what I'm gonna give it, a B+. Now, its evolution Toedscruel loses some of that goofy charm that Toadschool has, but it still looks pretty interesting, and I love the concept of convergent Pokemon as well, so I'm also gonna go ahead and give it a B+, and just give it the benefit of the doubt. Next up is Cloth, and Cloth is a perfectly solid Pokemon, just like its rock typing, so it gets a B from me. Caspikid is really interesting because right away I knew it was probably going to evolve into a grass fire type, and the design and its appearance also looks really cool, and so I personally really like it, and it's also another one that I had on my team early on in the game, and so it is going to get a B+ from me. However, its evolution is once again another case of a disappointing evolution, one that had so much potential but just botched it. Scovillain is just not a good design in my opinion. It's a disappointment because it's the first grass fire type ever, and this is what we got. It just not only seems like a very straightforward, vanilla, and basic way to do a grass fire type Pokemon, but also the way they did it with the two heads and just how they executed that idea as well. None of it is pulled off very well in my opinion, and so I think I'm gonna give this one, due to the disappointment factor with the grass fire typing, I think I'm going to put it with the Dunsparce and give it another F tier. I just think it was a combination of not good and disappointing, which is not a good recipe to be very well perceived in my eyes. We have yet another unique Pokemon here with Rellor, and there are indeed some unique Pokemon in Paldea, and this one is one of them. It is a dung beetle that is rolling around a ball of mud instead of dung. I think it's a cool animal to have a Pokemon based on, but I don't really have any strong opinions one way or another on this particular Pokemon. So I feel like just in my gut, just going by my gut, I'm going to give this guy a B-. Its evolution Rabsca, though, is really interesting actually. It not only gains the psychic type, but gains a whole new level of uniqueness to it, which just makes it more interesting. So I think I'm going to give this one a B. Flittle is up next, and I actually think Flittle is pretty interesting. It's got a unique look to it, but not so unique that it seems strange or weird, and overall I just think it's pretty good, so I'm going to give it a B+. And it evolves into Espathra, or Espathra, depending on how you pronounce that, and while I do really like that it's an ostrich Pokemon, and we finally got an ostrich Pokemon, and it's got some Egyptian elements to it as well, which is really cool, I'm not really a fan of the design overall, and so therefore I'm going to give it a C. Now we're looking at Tinkatink, and this one is going to be interesting because from what I've seen online, it seems like a lot of people actually really like this family of Pokemon, but for me personally, I'm not as big of a fan. I think the Fairy Steel type combination is really cool, but that's about all these Pokemon have going for them in my opinion, and so for Tinkatink in particular, I think I'm going to give it a C-. And its evolution Tinkatuff for whatever reason, just is even worse to me, so I'm gonna give it a D+. I apologize to anyone who might like these Pokemon. If you do, that's great, but it just doesn't do it for me. When it comes to the final evolution of these Pokemon though, Tinkaton, I have no idea why, but for whatever reason, I like it a lot better than I like its two pre-evolutions, even though they're basically the same thing, just with one being a little bigger each time. And so for that reason, I'm gonna give Tinkaton a B-. Definitely not my favorite Pokemon still by any means, but as far as this family of Pokemon goes, it definitely helped to redeem the rest of its line a little, and overall is a solid Pokemon that I can kinda get on board with. Now we're looking at Wiglet, our next convergent Pokemon, and just for the simple fact that it is using that concept, and I personally think that concept is so cool, and also the design is cool enough for a Diglett variant, I'm gonna go ahead and give it a B+. If it wasn't for the convergent thing, it would probably get like a B or even a C+, but I really like the idea of convergent Pokemon, so B+ it is. Wugtrio is kind of ridiculous simply for its name. They really didn't bother to change anything but the D into a W, which is pretty funny. As far as the design goes, it's about what you would expect for a Pokemon like this, especially coming off of Wiglet. So I guess by default, I need to also give it a B+, but I almost don't want to give it that ranking at the same time. It's really close between a B+ and a B, but once again, I think I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. Bombirdier is a Pokemon in-game that really sucks. For whatever reason, this Pokemon was super hard for me to catch, which made it really annoying. But as far as the design goes, I think it's pretty solid. I like how they incorporated the whole, I believe it's supposed to be a stork Pokemon, and so I like how they incorporated the whole stork bag into its anatomy as like a tuft of feather, and it turns it into an apron. It's just overall an interesting way to approach a Pokemon with that kind of inspiration. And so I think I'm gonna give it a B. Finizen is up next, and Finizen is a dolphin Pokemon. We finally got a dolphin Pokemon, and not only is it a dolphin, it's an adorable dolphin. So yeah, you're dang right I'm giving this Pokemon an S tier. Its evolution Palafin is really interesting though, because the only thing that changes on its base form is the little heart shape that it gets on its chest, and that's literally it, but then it also has a hero form that is significantly different to the appearance of its pre-evolution. And so that whole dynamic is actually really interesting and cool. I like that it's got a superhero theme going for it, and I like that that's factored into its ability as well. But as far as the designs go, I think the design of the hero form is okay. It's nothing great. It's definitely not as good as the base form of Palafin, or as good as Finizen, and then Palafin as well can't really be considered that good either as an evolution because it's almost identical to Finizen. So this one is a complicated one to rank, and so therefore I think I'm gonna give it a B+. Varoom is a Pokemon that I did not think I would like, but I actually grew to really like a lot, because seeing this Pokemon and its evolution on the Star Mobiles of Team Star made me kind of nervous about how this Pokemon was actually going to turn out when I got to see it not attached to this car, because being an engine Pokemon, it seemed like the kind of thing that was going to be really hard to pull off as a Pokemon and make it work, but I feel like they actually made it work really well. I think the whole Pokemon part of this Pokemon works really well, and I think having it wrap around some boulders that resemble a little car is a great way to do it and also still make the Pokemon feel natural, and so I am actually going to give Varoom an A rank. And for its evolution Reveroom, I think I'm also going to give it an A rank as well. Like I said, this was the type of thing that's really difficult to pull off and pull off well, and I think they pulled it off just about as well as you could, so yeah, A rank. Now we have Cyclizar, and Cyclizar is pretty cool. It's obviously basically just the baby Koraidon or Miraidon, but it in and of itself is also really cool too, and so it is also going to get an A rank as well. Orthworm is another goofy Pokemon that its value comes from it being goofy. It doesn't have the most amazing design ever, but it's got some personality to it. And so for that reason, I'm going to give it a B. Glimmet is a Pokemon that is super unique looking, and that definitely does give it some points. I don't think it strays so far into the strange category, but it does kind of toe that line a little bit, but I think it still stays on the interesting side of the unique spectrum, and so therefore I am going to give it a B as well. Its evolution Glimmora does a pretty good job, I think, of not only being an evolution of Glimmet, but also fine-tuning this concept as well, and so overall I think it is actually a little better than Glimmet, which is why I'm going to give it a B+. Greavard is up next, and Greavard is definitely one of those Pokemon that you just can't not love, and so for that reason, I am going to give it an A. Its evolution Houndstone is really cool too. Yeah, it might just basically be a bigger Greavard, but it actually does a really good job of looking even creepier than Greavard does, and so I think that gives it a lot of value on its own, and therefore also gets an A rank from me. Moving along, we are now going to take a look at Flamigo, and once again, I am so glad that we finally got a Flamingo Pokemon. This gen definitely gave us a lot of Pokemon based on animals that we've really wanted to have Pokemon of for a long time, but unfortunately, I feel like Flamigo doesn't quite hit the mark for me. It basically is just a Flamingo and that's it. And I know you could say the same thing about Finizen too, arguably, but Finizen is just really cute and adorable, whereas Flamigo is not really that way, and once again, is just a Flamingo, and so, like, it's okay, but not the greatest. It could have been better, and so I'm gonna put it in C tier. Next up is Citadel, and Citadel is another one of those Pokemon that is just cute, adorable, incredible, wonderful, in every way, shape, and form. There is not a single part of this Pokemon that isn't fantastic, and therefore it is another easy S tier. With its evolution Cetitan, I don't quite love it as much as I do Citadel, but I still love Cetitan at the same time. Like, don't get it twisted, Cetitan is great, even if it has a lot to live up to with Citadel. So therefore, it gets an A+. Not quite as good as Citadel, but still pretty freaking awesome. Next up is another cross-gen evolution, and this time it's Kingambit, which is an evolution to Bisharp. And Bisharp is not the kind of Pokemon I would have ever thought would have gotten an evolution, so this one threw me for a loop when I first saw it in the game, and looking back on it now, it actually is pretty insane. So I think I'm gonna give it the B+ ranking, because I really like it a lot. It actually makes me like this whole line of Pokemon more, and I'm just kind of flabbergasted that they actually gave an evolution to this Pokemon. It's just crazy and I love it. Up next is the Water Psychic type Veluza, and I really like the name of Veluza, but I think its name is probably the thing I like about it the most, and just how cool it is to say. As far as the design, it's perfectly fine and solid, but I don't think it's anything special, and so therefore, I think I'm gonna put it in the B tier. The first time I saw Dodonzo, I actually thought it was a Whiscash evolution because it looks that similar to it, and I feel like I probably would like it more if it was, but it's still a pretty solid Pokemon overall. I really like the relationship it has with Tatsugiri. I think that's really cool. I think the design that it has is solid on its own, and so I think I'm gonna give it a B+ ranking. Speaking of Tatsugiri, I think Tatsugiri is really cool. It's unfortunate that it does stay so small, but then again, that's the whole point of it. I really like how it has multiple forms. I really like the look of each one of its forms. I just think it's a really interesting Pokemon overall, and so I think I'm gonna put it in the A tier. Alrighty, now we are getting into the Paradox Pokemon, starting first with Great Tusk, aka Paradox Donphan. Now, first off, as a concept, the Paradox Pokemon get an S++ ranking. They're freaking incredible, I love the idea. However, there is a big caveat with these Pokemon, and that is their names. The names that they have are not really names at all. They are in fact code names, and the game does confirm them as sort of code names instead of regular proper Pokemon names, which is good that that's not actually their real names, but the games as of right now are using those code names as their real names, meaning that Great Tusk has to be known as Great Tusk, and we can't call it something else like you would a regular Pokemon, if you know what I mean. Like, it's like the Ultra Beasts, but if the Ultra Beasts' code names were actually their real names. And I just don't like that. I want to be able to call this by an actual name, and so I don't like the names of the Paradox Pokemon. It's fine if they're code names, it's fine if they have code names, I just don't want the code names to be the actual names because I don't think those work as good names at all. So, in terms of concept, S+++, in terms of the names, F-, and in terms of the designs, Great Tusk is going to get an A from me, Screamtail is going to get an A+, because it's terrifying, Brute Bonnet is going to get a B+, Fluttermane is going to get a B, Slitherwing is going to get an A+, Sandy Shocks is going to get a B, Iron Treads is also going to get a B, Iron Bundle is going to get an A because it's freaking adorable that we have a robot Delibird. Iron Hands is also going to get an A. Iron Jugulus is going to get a B. Iron Moth is going to get a B+. Iron Thorns is going to get a B+ as well. Roaring Moon is actually going to get an S tier because it looks freaking awesome. And finally, Iron Valiant is, it's going to get a B- because it does look kind of funny, even though it's cool. And now we've come to the pseudo-legendaries of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and the first stage of the Gen 9 pseudo-legendaries is none other than Frigibax. And Frigibax gets an S+++++ tier. This is easily my favorite Pokemon in the entire games, and is basically 1A to Cyndaquil now, guys. Like, I love this Pokemon that much. If I had discovered it earlier on, or if I discovered Cyndaquil later, their positions might be flip-flopped. Nostalgia is kind of keeping Cyndaquil in that favorite spot, but I have found a very, very, very strong 1A in terms of my favorite Pokemon of all time. I love Frigibax that much. It's cute, it's adorable, it's tough, but also just so adorable. It's got a cool Dragon Ice typing. Ice is also my favorite type, so it works really good with that. And it's also got a unique look to it too. I love this Pokemon. Easily my favorite of the entire generation, S+++++. Its evolutions aren't too bad as well. I definitely don't like them quite as much as I love Frigibax, but they're nothing to sneeze at either. Starting first with Arctibax, I think I've got to give it probably an A+, and I think that's what I would say for Baxcalibur too, A+. I think both of them look really cool. Once again, the Dragon Ice typing is awesome, but they definitely can't quite reach the level of their pre-evolution, because that is a Pokemon that I'm going to love and cherish for time and all eternity. I can't even begin to tell you guys how much I love this little thing. Moving along, however, next up we're going to look at Gimmighoul, and Gimmighoul is alright. I definitely have warmed up to it, I feel like, compared to how I felt about it when it was first revealed. I wasn't the hugest fan, but as of right now, I think it's alright. I think it's decent, and so I'm going to put it in the B tier. Its evolution, though, its evolution is another story. Goldango, from what I understand, is the 1,000th Pokemon. That is why you have to collect 1,000 coins from Gimmighoul, I'm assuming, in order to get it. I actually have not found it in the game myself, so I'm just going off of what I've heard. But in terms of just the actual design itself and the fact that it is the 1,000th Pokemon, this thing kinda sucks a lot. Its design on its own makes it look like it's the mascot of a string cheese company, and in terms of being the 1,000th Pokemon, that is such a huge letdown, because not only did they not make a very big deal about the 1000th Pokemon, which should be a huge deal, but also they made the 1000th Pokemon look like this. This is just a huge missed opportunity, a huge disappointment, a huge waste of potential, and so this is definitely another Pokemon that is joining the ranks of the F tier. Next up is the legendary quartet of the Paldea region, which I believe are known as the Treasures of Ruin. And when I first saw these guys, because I gotta be honest, I haven't found them in the game quite yet because they're kind of convoluted to get, I was really taken aback at what they looked like and what their names were and everything about them. They're really strange Pokemon, but the more I look at them, not only do I really like their designs, but I also just want to know more about them because there's obviously a lot going on here that is not completely apparent, and I really would love to learn more about where these Pokemon are coming from. Especially because their names in particular are all very Asian inspired, it seems like, and I want to know what that's doing in the region of Paldea. There just seems to be a lot of intrigue and just interestingness surrounding these Pokemon, and so that already actually gets them a pretty favorable look in my eyes as far as my opinion. And in terms of each individual Pokemon, starting first with Wo-Chin, or Wo-Chan, I'm going to mispronounce all these names, it is probably the most unique looking of all, but I actually think it looks pretty interesting and solid and cool. So I'm gonna give it a B+, and moving along to the next one, Chin Pao, this one is actually really cool. It's a cool little snow leopard. It's got some really interesting looking icicle metal fang looking things, but overall it's a pretty cool looking design, and so I'm gonna give it an A tier. And then we've got Ting Lu, which is a deer or an elk or a moose of some kind. It also looks really interesting, but also really interesting in a good way, and so I think I'm going to give it a B+ ranking. And finally, last but not least, we've got Chi Yu, which is probably my favorite of the bunch along with Chin Pao. I think this one has a really interesting, cool look to it, and so I think I'm going to give it an A ranking as well. And I've got to say, part of these Pokemon's higher rankings is also due to the way you obtain them in the game by finding each one of their stakes and having to collect them all in order to be able to access the Pokemon. I think that's really, really awesome, really cool. It definitely lives up to the legendary status, and like I said, there is a lot going on with these Pokemon that doesn't quite meet the eye, and I'm excited to learn about it, which is why I think these Pokemon are actually really cool for as strange as they seem. And last but not least, at least for right now, we'll see what happens in the future as far as DLC goes, we have Koraidon and Miraidon. I'm going to start first with Koraidon because I played Pokemon Scarlet myself, and while it wasn't quite at this level when it was first revealed and even in the lead up to the games, now that I've actually played the games all the way through, Koraidon is an S tier Pokemon for me. Not only is the design itself great, and I definitely prefer it over Miraidon now, but also its shiny is probably the single coolest looking shiny that we've ever got. They did not have to go that hard on Koraidon shiny, but they did anyway, and that just makes this Pokemon all the more incredible, but it already was incredible. The story behind it as well also really adds to how cool both of these Pokemon are, and I just think Koraidon is fantastic. So S tier for me, and in terms of Miraidon, it has a lot of the same things going for it, but I don't think it's quite as good. I think I would put it in the A+ tier, so not too far behind, but not quite as good either. Overall though, I think this is one of the strongest box art duos that we have ever gotten, certainly in a long time, and I think they really helped to make the game all the more enjoyable, because when you've got a really cool box art legendary, it just makes the whole experience all the more fun and exciting when you actually get the chance to catch these Pokemon, and that was especially the case in these games because of how the legendaries were used. So overall, they're both fantastic, and overall, Paldea has a pretty solid Pokedex to its name. There definitely are some weird, crazy, wacky, and I will admit, bad Pokemon in this generation, but there are a lot of really good ones too. And those are my opinions. They might change as time goes on and as more time passes and I get to actually get used to these Pokemon and get more acclimated to them, but overall I feel pretty positive about what this generation of Pokemon gave us. How do you guys feel about these Pokemon though? What do you think of my opinions? If you disagree or agree or whatever, I want to know about all of it in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new for more. And remember, all of this is just my opinion. And with all that being said, I will be back with another video very soon, and until then, as always, thank you guys so much for watching this one. I really appreciate it, and I will smell you guys later.